Hello everyone, my name is Chase and I am a mentalist magician. Everything that I do is 100% fake. But what if it wasn't? And where did magic originally come from? Well, in this series I am travelling across the UK with help from some of my friends.
It was the work of the devil. He was charged with an actual crime.
I felt like really slowly, like a hand come around my neck and a hand come around my face. And the next thing I know, I'm being like dragged by my face.
And hopefully we can answer the question, is magic real?
Right, so we've just done some magic to some people. Where are we first of all?
We're in the cherry tree in the centre of Canterbury.
Cool, and I've just done some magic to you. How was it? Was it all right?
I mean, I'm a bit frazzled. You made all the Wi-Fi change.
Made all the Wi-Fi change. Did you say you screenshotted it, right?
I did as well, yeah.
Yeah, screenshotted it. So yeah, whoever screenshotted it, send it over and we'll put it on the screen or something like that.
That's crazy. Yeah, like there have been magicians that have come in here in the past, and I love magic. None of them have been able to do what you just done. That's dynamo levels of shit. Like,
Thank you.
But yeah, no, that's crazy.
Is it alright if we do something else? Can we film? Can we actually film something for the Google? Just pretty normal Google. I think I've done this trick to you already. But can you Google anything you want? Keep it PG.
Okay. Yeah.
I know. PG just to make make sure it's
yeah,
normal
it's
Google.
real. I Google sausage rolls.
Sausage rolls. Cool. It's definitely sausage rolls, right?
Sorry.
No, I want you to Google any character, real, dead, fake, alive, whatever you want.
Okay.
Bearing in mind, we have had a conversation about like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. I don't want that to influence you to make it as random as possible.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Can I have a look at some of those trees?
Yeah.
Cool. So you've went Henry Rinter, The Secret History. Why did you go for that?
It's one of my favourite books, and he is the titular character in it.
Cool. What if I told you I needed to go for that? I've already unfortunately still.
I think you were crazy.
Have you got Instagram?
I do.
Go on Instagram right now. I've definitely done this trick to you, right?
It's
And my Instagram is Chasing the Illusion.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly that, right? Follow me. So like you're chasing someone, the illusion.
Okay.
Right, can I have one too? Right. So this is definitely my Instagram,
Yep.
see me. Look at my bio, it says. Get
Eleanor. There's a witch in the pond. Bring the witch
Kill it.
back. Oh, that's creepy.
right?
I'm screenshotting that. So he said type in a character from anything. So I chose the titular character from a book that I really like. And then he said type it in on Google on his phone. And, then he
And
was
she
like,
Googled something beforehand, sausage rolls.
Yeah. Sausage roll.
Make it short.
and then this is his Instagram and that's his bio.
Make sure you follow me. Also, I like all the things on your back as well,
Thank
right?
you.
It's all like stuff about like carrots and stuff like that, which is perfect for the series that we're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being so being
No
part of
worries,
it
thank
and
you.
stuff like that.
So I work the day shifts in here, and more often than not, that leaves me alone in the pub for extended periods of time because day drinkers don't really day drink anymore. And my name's Emma.
Hello, Emma.
I will sometimes. Sometimes I will be in here completely alone, and there will be kind of like a whisper on the wind of someone saying my name, just really like quietly. Normally from this area over here, so I'll be stood over there, and they'll just be like that. But I don't respond. And it got really creepy the other day because we have a floor cleaner in here, and it's like a machine, and you push it around and it cleans the floors. It wasn't working properly the other day. And my boss was like, oh, it's not working, we're gonna spot clean, whatever. I was like, okay, fair enough. Left it in the stockroom. And I was cleaning glasses and it turned on by itself. And I was like, oh, that's a bit weird, but press the button and turn it off. And I don't think too much about it. And then about 20 minutes later, it turns on again. And I'm like, weird, and turn it off again. 2 customers come in and I'm talking about it and it turns on. And it freaks them out and it freaks me out. So I turn it off again. And then it was the 4th time that it turned itself on. I was stood behind the bar putting some glasses on, and I went and I just shouted out, "Will you stop?" And it turned off. Oh, and I was like, okay. So I texted my boss and I was like, oh, there's something going on, and like he keeps turning it on. And he was like, I took the battery out of it. It shouldn't be doing that. And I looked around the stockroom, and sure enough, it's a big, like, fat battery, and it was not in the machine. And I opened the machine up, and it was not in there, and it was turning on completely by itself. There used to be a barmaid who worked here before I did, and she used to do the day shifts. Now, behind the bar, we have an old cellar. This pub is built in 1372. We've always been a pub. The cellar was used to store bodies when a battle happened nearby here. Yeah. So
She knows her stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow. Don't know,
Well, ancient histories.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have been coming here for years, right? And you didn't know any of this. So
Half a decade,
No.
and we didn't have a clue.
I follow her on Instagram. Like, so, yeah, they stored bodies to keep them cool, and then they could bury them after the battle was over. And she swears blind, like hand to God, that she was stood on top of the cellar hatch and felt knocking coming from underneath it. Now there's a ladder down there, but you would know if someone's under there, right? You wouldn't shut the hatch if someone's in there. But she swears blind that someone like knocked on it. She used to read a lot on day shift as well. And when she'd go to like the bathroom or whatever, she'd put the book on the side and guarantee she'd come back and the book would be on the floor. And she would like put it far enough back that it wouldn't fall over and all that kind of jazz. And yeah, spooky, scary
Very
stuff.
spooky. So with all that in mind, there's one question I ask everyone, and you guys will be asked this at some point, so don't worry too much. But I've asked everybody on this journey of this series. It's a yes or no answer, don't elaborate. Is magic real?
Yes.
Cool, that's very good. That's the quickest person I was here to answer so
Yeah,
far.
hands down.
So thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay, so we're a little bit drunk, but we're choosing to is magic real, guys? Is magic real? Yeah. Okay, so we are here going on a little tour around Canterbury with. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm John Hipsley, and I've been running this tour, the Ghost Tour of Canterbury, since 1991.
Yeah, man, I looked you up, I won't lie, and I was like, he knows his stuff, do you know what I mean? So,
Well, just means long in business, don't they? Need long in tooth. But when I started the tour, I had a fascination with the supernatural. When I was little, I was sent away to boarding school, and I didn't really enjoy it. Mother said she was going to see me later when she dropped me off, and I thought it was going to be that afternoon. But I didn't see her for 9 years, so what's not to love? I hated it, and I spent a lot of time running away. And one night, my friend Miles Parker was going to run away to Florida. I didn't know where Florida was. He said it was near Maidstone, so I was like, oh, fair enough. Supposed to meet him at 9:30 around the back of the bike sheds, and he just never shut up. So I waited till midnight in case I got the time wrong, because I arranged with friends. And then at midnight, I went back to the dormitory. I also have the same stinky room. And I could hear and smell him as he's up farting and snoring. Well, he didn't, so we did.
Oh, yeah.
And let him sleep. But about 4:30, he shook me awake and said, "Come on, let's go now." It's 13. He said, "Come on, let's go now." And then we get anywhere at 4:30. I said, "Send me a postcard from Florida." Now, you probably don't remember postcards, but years ago we used to write these things called cards. So I basically said, "Send me a postcard." And the next, about an hour and a half later, I had to get up for breakfast because you have to eat twice at public school. And we're both gone for enough speed. And I was having a second breakfast. The headmaster called me and said, "Where's Miles this morning?" I didn't want to say run away to Florida because snitches get stitches, the first week. And I just said he's having a line. It was Sunday morning. It was a forgivable line. The headmaster shrugged and walked away, looked really pissed off. And then later the police came, Kent Police. You have the police in Essex still, don't you?
We do, yeah.
You've only got
Believe
two.
it or not.
We've only got two in Kent. And one's on holiday, so you won't see anything. But the police turned up at the school and addressed the entire school in chapel again at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon to tell us that Miles had been killed the night before on a place called Linton Hill at precisely 4:30. So what had come to my bedside to shake me awake was already dead, and that was more frightening finding out the next day than it was at the time, because I didn't know he was dead.
Yeah.
But I found out later it's sort of crisis apparition. It's not a ghost. It's a split second or so where the spirits can say goodbye to their mates. And I wasn't the only one to see him, because other boys in the dormitory saw him from different angles, so a solid figure. Plus he was able to physically shake me awake from my slumbers. And his mother saw him in Manchester. That's where they lived, they came from Manchester. And his father was working from Bourneville at Cadbury's, and he saw him too. But he was in his bed and breakfast up in Bourneville. And he rang the school, thinking there must be something going on there, just in his mind. And they basically, the housemaster said, "No, he's fine. He's just had an argument to the dormitory with John." So nothing but calm yourself. And then early the next morning, around I think about 6 o'clock, the Birmingham police knocked at his bed and breakfast door and said, "I'm sorry to say your son is dead." And it's quite frightening. So, trying to be fun.
I know, thank you.
You didn't do the camera. So I decided that I saw dead people all the time. This is the time before the film came out, so it was late. And the housemaster said, don't mention that you've seen dead people, otherwise you'll end up in a mental institution. He said it's best to just save it for therapy sessions. In public school, we've got plenty of those. So I was convinced that I saw people, but I certainly did come across a few in life. I mean, a couple of months ago I was at Tesco's in Whitstable, and a little girl just came up to me randomly in the car park and said, "My mummy and daddy love me very much." Oh, I thought, well, I don't, because they left you in the car. But I took her by her hand, and I said, "Where are you, parents?" They're over by the main entrance where the trolleys are. And I took her by her hand, and as I walked towards the entrance, I could see a mum and a little baby child in a pushchair screaming, and a father looking fractious. And so I thought, well, maybe that's why she's separated from me. And I took her by the hand to see her mum. As we approached the child who was screaming, the child just suddenly stopped. So I thought, oh, she's seen her sister.
Yeah.
Just relaxed. And I just said to the mum, "Your daughter says you love her very much. Really sweet." She said, "How bloody dare you? My daughter died this day 5 years ago."
Wow.
And apparently she was still hanging around. She didn't know she was dead. She was a little 5-year-old child who was chasing butterflies from the top floor of a tower block, which had sort of temporary balconies on it. The balcony gave way and she fell to
Yeah.
death. But she doesn't know she's dead. She thinks she's
Of course.
dead. And she came, basically not to tell me, I didn't know she was dead, to say that she liked the new wallpaper they'd put in for her newborn brother. Thomas the Tank Engine wallpaper. So you might think it might be a gift seeing ghosts. It can be a bit frightening.
Yeah, of course.
For their man, for the person you talk to, and also for yourself. So it's not a gift. Now, certainly people I know who are psychics and special people.
Yeah.
I think what
Special people.
and if you know what a medium can do, just think what a large can do. So sorry, keep it fun.
Passionate.
So I basically when I left school, I was off to university at Cambridge to read history. And between leaving school and going to university, I worked in the cathedral's record office as a Latin translator, working on the exorcism of the Church of Rome in 1000 to 1530. It's not quite as exciting as it sounds, but it was interesting, and
Yeah.
mostly it's all about the locations. And some of the buildings, if you look down there, there's a place called Stratton Park, the red sign building, sticks out down there with a medieval front to it. It's been exorcised 4 times in 500 years.
Wow.
And it's a poltergeist of a small child who fell down the back stairs, broke his neck, wasn't aware he was dead, continues kicking off on the top floor. So I used to spend my lunch breaks going around to these places saying, "I see you've got a ghost." And they go, "What the?" "You're mad." Some said, "Oh, you're an exorcist?" I said, No, I'm just an archivist. But what's the difference between an archivist and an exorcist? Is that one's got a life, the other one hasn't got a life. deals with dead. And so I used to go around all these places. There were about sort of 500-600 places in Canterbury being exercised. So I just started going to most of them. And some people looked at you right and bad, and other people said there's something up there. And that was one of the ones the secretary said, "Oh, come up and have a look."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, right, okay." Don't really want to interact with this sort of thing, but it was quite a friendly little child. But died around 13 to 40, so still dressed in raggedy clothes, but didn't know he was dead.
Cool.
And most
We're
of
not
the
cool,
ghosts I've seen and interact with don't know they're dead.
Yeah.
Miles didn't know he was dead, so he just assumed he was running a bit late. So we'll see how we go.
Cool.
And
Excited.
when I was in the archive, I found out about the witch trials of Canterbury.
Yeah.
Magic
'Cause
witches
that's-
didn't exist in England. Well, only in Harry Potter.
Because we was having this conversation earlier. It's like whenever we talk about people, like if they believe in magic or not, it always ends up going back to like poltergeists and ghosts and stuff like that. It always that's why it's quite interesting to talk about both things instead of just focusing on one thing. It's quite interesting to talk about both. So
when I first found out about the witch trials, I was working in the archive. It was the last week in the archive, and I was told since you've done your term, you can, a bit like last day of term, you can bring in games. But they said you could look at anything in the archive, anything was just up to you. So there was always a section, a rope top section called the Catholic Archive we weren't allowed to look at, and they said, "Oh, just go and have a look." So I hooked up the rope, and there's always this big leather box at the end of the archive, which has intrigued me. So I opened the box, and sure enough, it was Matthew Hopkins' journals from Manningtree in Essex. Have you heard of Matthew Hopkins?
Yes.
Which one, a journal?
Sorry, I'm obsessed.
I mean, it is
Yeah.
Essex, so you hope.
He came from Manningtree. He had an assistant called John Cern. He came to Canterbury and he tested 1,800 women in 4 years. He was incentivised. He was paid equivalent to about £5 a head for every one he convicted or killed.
Right.
So he was basically on a commission basis. He was invited down by the Dean of Canterbury, which was a new post-Reformation, who controlled the chapter and the dean, two different things. So the chapter house, you found in most cathedrals, the dean, or the deanery, basically the rents and rates of the city. So he was financially invested. So he wanted to get rid of as many as he could. And most of the women he found in Canterbury, according to his records, were just housewives. But upgraded to witchcraft or quickie divorce, which makes more sense, if you can't get a divorce, because the Catholic system says you've got to name a adulterous process and things, and or annulment, it's impossible. But if you've got a child, you can never get a divorce, because that means you've had some sort of relationship. It's just miraculous. Jesus, something's going on. But I found that most of these women, some of them followed the old religion called Wiccan craft, which gave us the word witchcraft. The Wiccanist movement was resurgent again in the 1960s, and well, that's a new Wiccanism. White magic and black magic.
Yeah.
So white magic is for lovers, black magic is voodoo from the sort of South Atlantic sort of area. Sort of voodoo dolls and that sort of Caribbean area. That was brought over by people from Africa. They brought their religion with them and dumped it in the Seychelles. But I found that some of these people had the ability to use herbs, or herbalism, we call it now. Homeopathy is the same thing, basically. They could cure a headache using witch hazel on the forehead. So if you have a headache...
Mate, I need that right now.
Yeah.
We've had a bit of a session, and I'm feeling it.
So witch hazel,
yeah,
if you rub
right now.
it on the temple itself, it will actually deaden the headache completely. I don't know why. It's the analgesic effect of witch hazel. And the other thing you can use, if you have a toothache, you rub oil of cloves on your gum line. On the outside, it will actually deaden the pain of a toothache. So if you at that period of things, if you're talking 16, 20, had a headache, and you went to one of these women who lived in the woods, you go, "Oh, it's magic." And they go, "It's not magic.
Yeah,
just
totally.
hedgecraft."
Well, this was really interesting, because the whole point of like this series and stuff is like figuring out if it ever did exist or where it originally came from and stuff like that. And you've basically hit the
There were
head.
some real witches in England. Mother Shipton, you might have heard of her, up in Knaresborough.
Yeah.
She petrified a waterfall. Well, I think it was more like it was limestone with water running off it, but it looks like a petrified waterfall. Supposedly she cursed it, and it went to stone. And some people did have the ability to weave spells, but most people were spellbound in England. Have you heard the expression spellbound?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
bound not to be able to cast a spell.
Yeah.
Because casting involves literally like a spell that cast in a direction, then you weave the spell together, literally like that. So the spell comes in, you weave it together. So different crafts brought together into a witching.
Yeah.
So when we say the word coven, we think of witches' coven, but coven is simply the Saxon word for 12.
Right.
So 12 in their number met in the woods, so it's a coven of witches. So it's a misnomer that the coven was some creepy.
It's interesting because you watch like TV shows and stuff like that, and they mention it.
She's
Yeah.
not the coven.
Yeah.
Now, the image we have of witch now is pointy hat, broomstick, cat, not of Harry Potter per se.
Yeah.
But they were the tools of the trade given to non-conformists. So if you have to remember that England was covered with a big woodland called the Blean, which started round here, stretched all the way up to Nottingham Forest and the way to the West Country, the Forest of Dean, all the way down to the south coast of the New Forest. And that was basically most of England was covered with forest land. When they cleared the forest land to build the villages, they left an area around the edge of the wood. It wasn't wildwood, it was called coppiced land. Have you heard of coppiced? So when you chop down chestnut trees, you get little spikes of wood sticking up. That's also called the sticks. So living out of the sticks meant you were a non-conformist, you weren't a Christian. Therefore, if you're living out of the sticks, you're more likely to be of the Wiccan craft, therefore you were the witch. So if you saw somebody with a body had a broomstick and a cat, you would say, she's a witch. She's a multitasking non-conformist female person. Welcome to the city. And politically version. And the jobs they were given was, one job was to sweep the shit off the streets using a besom broomstick. Now you probably know that besom is the shaft of the broomstick and broom is the stuff at the end, it's broomstick. It's two things. Another job they had was clearing the dead of their jewellery using a leather hat filled with herbs taken with a stench of rotting flesh. The nose game was pulled over the nose. They were sent to the plague pits to remove the jewellery using a sharp knife to pull the flesh and the bones off to get the rings off, because the body swells after death, and also cutting the ears off to get earrings and things off. So it was not a nice job.
Yeah.
And the third job they had was using familiar animals such as cats and dogs. If you had an animal at that time that you could call by a name and it came to you, it was familiar to you. That's what familiar.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a spirit animal. It was just a black cat or any dog that you said, Jeffers. The dog is familiar to her because at that time all animals were wild. So if you suddenly had communication with animals, Dr. Doodle would be hung for a witch clearly. But it's weird sort of English stories. Oh yeah, it makes sense. Just talk to the animals. No, that's witchcraft. So, speaking in tongues. I mean, the original. If you read the original book of Dr. Doolittle, it's actually all about witchcraft, not about talk to the animals. It's a really creepy book. The first edition. Then they sort of dulled it down to the Disney version. Speak to the animals. But it's much more fun. But those women who lived out in the sticks also had the skill of taking people's confession that wouldn't go to church. So if you had a child out of wedlock until 1971, under English law, you could be demonised under English law, therefore put into institution, being a demon. I don't know, we're a modern country. We'll get back after Brexit. But your children would be taken away from you by nuns forcibly, and they'd be taken into an incubator and then just literally at birth. And then you'd never see your child again. And it's quite common now when you look back at sort of people who are sort of 60 now who had children in the 70s. A lot of them ended up in mental institutions, went to halfway houses and things. Most of them committed suicide. Suicide was illegal in England until 1961.
I mean, illegal, but it's what are you going to do?
Well, no, you think about it. We say commit suicide because suicide was illegal.
Yeah.
Now we say take one's life.
Yeah.
But until 61, if you were found attempting to commit suicide, it was death by hanging.
So you kind of win-win in a way.
The idea was, because it came from canon law years ago, that God chose your time of departure, not you. So if you chose your time of departure, it's a sin against God.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's still a crime.
Yeah.
So canon law trumps crown law, because crown law is based on canon law. Canon law is the church law, so that's the older law. So that's why English law is weird. Weird sort of things like, we'll cover the rule of thumb later on, but this is just weird English sort of idioms. And as we go round, we'll learn more about the English language and idioms and phraseology, how it mixes in with history and the city.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we get to our first location over here.
Cool.
Top floor up here is used by Matthew Hopkins. That was his office in what was called the Black Horse Inn. It was opened in 1300 as a pub. At that time in Canterbury, you had 365 pubs within the city walls, so hardly anything to do. And the advantage of having that many pubs was the Cathedral of Canterbury collected from drunk people, because if you were drunk, you committed sin, and if you committed sin, you needed redemption.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Go to the cathedral. Yeah, sort of professionals here. So that top floor room had within it 3 little tiny cells called pressing cells. Have you heard of pressing charges?
Yeah.
So pressing charges originally was done by people like Hopkins, who were lawyers, who would compress people into small cells, and because they were so cramped, people would confess to what it was to get out of them. Now, if you didn't have a pressing cell, because that had to be specially built, you could take the accused, lay them on the ground, pile planks of wood on top of them, and then rocks and weights to compress them that way. And that officially stopped in 1953, abolished from English law books.
Oh my god.
So I know we're a modern country. I don't know what. I'm getting back after Brexit. I get
It
European,
is, wow, yeah.
European law student. I love the old Benny Bananas. Yeah, get back after Brexit. It makes you proud. So the middle level below here with the women who had already confessed to being witches. Because obviously they're getting out the small rooms, and he weighed them against the Holy Bible. If they weighed more than the Bible, they're a witch. If they weigh less than the Bible, they're Kate Moss, burn them anyway.
That makes sense.
So yeah, the Bible doesn't weigh a lot.
That is, well,
How often did they weigh less?
very rarely. But the thing was, you see, it was more about trying to get conviction rates up, because it was a physical thing that you couldn't trick, theoretically. But of course he did trick it. He took the deconsecrated Bibles, St. Peter's Church for example, cut all the pages out of them, glued them back together again, so it looked like a massive book that weighed nothing at all. When the witch sat, they put a lead weight underneath the seat, so you couldn't see it, but it weighed more, so he understood about gravity. At the time when gravity wasn't actually formalised at that point, but he understood the ideas of scales of justice. So modern justice is blind justice, whereas his was fixed justice. Fixed to the point that he knew they were accused. And generally we knew that because he was a witch himself. Matthew Hopkins was convicted for witchcraft in 1649. Ironically. Yeah, one of the few, yeah. But then he knew what he's looking for, witches. He could ask their familiars, talk to them directly. They go, how do you know this? You must be of the craft. Don't you dare. In 1660, when the king was restored in England, the very monarch Charles II, Cromwell's body and Hopkins' body were both dug up in Ely in Cambridgeshire, where they're very next to each other, because they were basically in control of them. Although we don't think that Hopkins and Cromwell really knew each other that well, but we know that Hopkins was a lawyer who died at the age of 35, basically went to Cromwell and said, I can be your witchfinder. Cromwell said, yeah, fine, go for it. There wasn't an official title, but he called himself Witchfinder General.
Yeah.
And when you think of the Hammer House of Horror film of the Witchfinder, it's done by Vincent Price. He looks like he's a bit of a greybeard, but in actual fact he's only about 35 or 32 when he died, so it's a misnomer, sort of wizened old bastard. But he was a funny young man. Now Hopkins believed that the best test against witches was things made by God and rejected things not made by God. So the Bible's a good example. But other things like air, water and fire, they're good tests. So if a witch is thrown from a tower and air rejects them, then they are wicked. So they would fly. That's the theory of flight. We didn't understand why people flew, but they only flew because they were rejected by air. In the same way that aircraft fly, because that's rejected by air, it goes up there, creating lift. We didn't understand about lift. It wasn't until Kitty Hawk years later we understood about lift. But in his day, it was the suggestion, well, if they fly away and then die, then they're Christian. But they are dead. But you know, they're innocent. So he would take them to St Margaret's Church around the corner here. He'd been to Venice in his travels. Have you been to Venice in your travels, Polly?
I'm going to Italy later this year, actually, sorry enough, but close enough. But
If you go to Venice and accuse them of being Italian, they will kill you. Different country. And it really was an independent view.
Yeah.
And when the traders were in Venice, there used to be an island just off Venice called Calentina, which is where we got the word quarantine. 14 days at Calentina was the quarantine for plate ships coming into Venice. If you go to Calentina, the cruise ships stop at Calentina as well, but don't get off at Calentina because it's basically 40,000 grave pits. They're pits of 400 people each, so 40,000 grave pits and 40.
Yeah.
It's a really haunted place. They're all sort of savage people. But the Doge, who was in charge of the trading empire of the Venetians, used to enjoy torture. He was a sadist by trade, as we said. But he actually used one of the old church towers of the Doge's palace, took all the floors out, used to throw people off the top of the inside and watch them fall onto a bed of nails for sport. So, you know, you can imagine Matthew Hopkins going to Venice saying, "Ooh, lucky star, yeah, nice. So you massage as well, yeah, hate women, yeah." So he was a perfect man. And when he came back to England, he took that idea and took women to St Margaret's Church down here and threw them from the top. But to get them up there, he had to use the bell ropes and the pulleys. So he would tie the arms of the accused behind their back and use something in England called the lift, which is basically tying the arms behind their back and lifting them up the church towers. First wrench usually took the arms and the shoulder socket. Second wrench took the muscles off the bone, and the witches did it. And the or the connective tissue. Talking tongues, hubble bubble toilet drop. Now, the process was at the very top, if they were just hanging by bits of skin, they might be screaming in agony, confessing to something. So they might say they're not a witch 3 times. Under Hopkins' law, it's called, that was confession. So if you deny yourself 3 times, you're a witch. If you say you are a witch, you're a witch. If you deny yourself, you're going to get thrown into the tower. So of the 1,800 people, it was going to be a good flying trial.
Yeah.
It's like bungee jumping without the ropes. And those that land at the foot of the tower will go there later on to get a feel for it. Some of those corpses were found in 1990 by British Gas. British Gas were doing the archaeology around here without realising it. And the work experience lad found 400 people in a trench, or bits of them anyway. And they were all thrown into a pauper's pit. Now, when the bones were found, all the arms were ripped from their sinews, so it's clear they were wrenched off in a brutal way. But those that survived, there's 500 survived, 1,300 perished in a 4-year period. That's a lot of
Yeah, good odds.
good odds, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll take money on that one. I'll go with that. Yeah, I'll have a tenner on that. But the next stage was the swimming trial. Now, can you swim?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, no. The swimming was illegal in England officially until
Exactly, yeah.
1816. You know, it was
I can swim, so I'm a
1816.
witch.
It only became legal in 1816 when a doctor from the Royal Society explained water in the lungs is killing you, not the way of reviving. Until 1816, do you know how to revive people from drowning?
Yes.
Which was?
I mean, it's not CPR. Am I wrong?
No. You've heard the expression blowing smoke up your arse.
Yes.
That was the only way to revive them.
Oh gosh.
On canal riverside, you would have pipe boxes with clay pipes in, striking paper and tobacco. So if you went along the canal without your pipe by chance, you could revive somebody by pulling their trousers off them, taking a puff of smoke in your pipe, and blowing the smoke up their bottom to revive them. Because tobacco had the life-giving property.
Is it effective?
Well, it never worked, but we didn't understand why. We just changed the technique was incorrect. But from that, we got the expression blowing smoke up your arse.
Well, let's not try it tonight, though. Yeah, just point out there.
England's a lovely. The Americans think we're quaint, we're just weird. Morgan's weird. Yeah. So that trial didn't really work too well because for buoyancy, we put something called a millstone around your neck, not your neck, but a female person's neck, and that was strapped around the neck on a leather strap. The millstones weren't like the huge stones you get from mill houses. These were quern stones used by women who every day would grind corn to make flour, to make holy bread, or basically make bread. And that's called the daily grind. Is it Preston daily
Yeah.
grind? That's where it comes from. You grind corn every day. So your husband come back, what's for dinner? Well, just made it. Lovely fresh bread. Yeah, good for you, madam. And but if those quern stones, the top stones, used to wear out, and so used to leave them out their front door, and weavers would use these quern stones as weights for their looms. A lot of weaving around here, so lots of weaving weights. So they use those in a strap around the neck. Now, around the neck, they put a noose with a stone in it, a flint stone, right in the centre of it. So basically, it would cut into the throat as they put the noose in nice and tight. And then the hands were crossed over their knees, the arms were ripped off the shoulder blades. When the hands were placed on the knees, they were administered with a nail, 7-inch iron nails, went through the back of the hands into the kneecaps. And that affected your ability to swim. I mean, you say you can swim, but could you swim if I nailed your hands to your knees and put a
Probably
millstone
not,
in?
no.
And that's probably the right answer. If you knew what you were going to go for. The only woman to survive this was a woman who was visited by Hopkins the night before her trial at Westgate Jail, and somebody dressed as a priest came to give her the last rite. It's a bit weird because she's a witch. She's not going to need the last rite. She's not Christian. But that priest, we think it's Hopkins, said if you breathe through a piece of straw, you'll survive this trial. And so she took a piece of straw from the prison floor, put it in her mouth. When she was lowered into the river on Friars Bridge, she survived for 32 and a half minutes, breathing through the straw. And everybody said, oh my God, she couldn't believe it. Trying to be fun. I'm a sound engineer again. Shit, but when she survived, Hopkins didn't really think she had survived, but she survived that long. He dragged her by a hair to the butter market up with what now called Orange Street, previously called the Friars. So if you stand by the Marlow Theatre, do you remember the Marlow Theatre was? So that little bridge there, that's Friars Bridge. And if you stand on the bridge, you can still find the burn marks where Matthew Hopkins lowered women to their deaths. There's only 500 people, or 499 to be accurate. And when she was brought to the butter market, small children under 12, called the innocents, were brought around to shave the head of the accused, because if you're going to meet the Lord, you've got to take your hair off. That's, even when deaf people, they have their head shaved before burial, otherwise you get lice and stuff in the bodies. So when they shaved the heads, they didn't use razors, they used axe heads, so razor sharp axes, but weren't that sharp. And of course, children aren't very good at shaving anyway, so they'd often cut the head open. Stopping the bleeding, they'd use tar and tallow, so that's tarring, and then the feather was just all the rubbish in the marketplace thrown over them. So she was tarred and feathered, and she was an accelerant at that point. She was then dragged down the street by the back of a cart to be carted somewhere, and to be dragged by a cart to Wincheap Gallows down there, which she was ready to be set on fire. They put her on a raised platform and tied her to a what's called a witching tree, which is a tree struck by lightning. It means it can't burn again. It's a perfect place to burn a witch.
Yeah.
The mouth was forced open and a 7-foot iron rod was blasted through the back of the neck, severing the cerebral cortex. When Hopkins first tried this in Thaxted in Essex, he noticed that they became unresponsive, which means they'd accepted their fate. He didn't understand that they were actually, basically severed their cerebral cortex. So they go, oh. Sometimes they would confess in the Dutch language. You want the Dutch word for "you've got me a witch"? That was a good answer there. And they would place gunpowder bags around the neck, around this post, and then they put roofing material at their feet, called faggots, not Americans. If you go to New York, don't mention you burn faggots. When they were set on fire, the small children, the innocents that actually administered the tar and feather, would then take the flaming torches from the fire and say, "Burn the witch! Burn the witch! Burn the witch!" And, it was just to cheer people up. And it got people going. Even people walking past here, what's happening out here? But it didn't really get the crowd going, because the children would never forget that day, because when you set fire to a witch, they burnt around 30 minutes in a ferocious steam fire. And what happens, the blood boils, the fat renders down, and sometimes the head blows off because the pressure of the brain, which is 80% water, it boils, and the explosion will take the eyes and the teeth out.
Yeah.
So if you were standing in a crowd around it, you'd actually hear the hissing, spitting, and then suddenly the explosive charge of the gunpowder and the head blowing off. So people go, "Do you want to be a witch?" I don't think so. I think I'll just leave it. I have something else. I have advertising. So that was basically how we got rid of all the witches. So all we have now is just a little rooms up here, the pressing cells, just still up there. And students from University of Kent and Christchurch often spend a night up there to see if they can spend a whole 8 hours in these little tiny cells. They're still there. It looks like a sideboard now, a 3-foot sideboard. But the cells are in there still, and you can lock people in. And last November we had 3 students who bet each other 50 quid they could spend a whole night. I'm hardly going to do it. But are you about 6 foot, are you?
Yeah, well,
That's your Cuban heels?
On a good day. On a good day.
if I jump.
Ladies. So what happened here was one of the students ended up with a fractured rib. He wasn't in there for a full 8 hours. He was supposed to challenge. One ended up with a ruptured spleen, and one ended up with a broken wrist. So they were all basically injured within this 3-foot cube. The only thing that happened was poltergeist of the witches who were accused. They might well have been a real witch in there at some point and left her spirit there, because that's the last thing she remembered before being tortured. So it's a really good place. Now the building next door is Tiny Tim, so we'll try and get there now. Looks like a crowd of people discussing life. So
You wouldn't notice how small it is, though.
Now this building here has within it, the very top floor, a bricked-in window painted like a window. The French call that trompe-l'oeil. We call that brick.
So that's not a real window.
No, the middle one is a fake window.
Wow.
But in the evenings you wouldn't really notice that. When you see it's a timber frame structure like this one here, it's faced with mathematical tile introduced in the 1670s to avoid brick tax, which was levied on every building in England. 1 penny per 1,000 bricks doesn't seem a lot of money, but a penny was a lot of money anyway. Find the Green Man all over England in various places. Lots of churches have him because he's the pagan symbol of Wiccanism. His wife is Mother Nature. He was the god of the trees. Mother Nature was the god of the seasons. We still talk about Mother Nature. We still talk about Jack in the Green. When we say things like touch wood, we're referring to Jack in the Green. So he reminds me very much of his girlfriend. Same beard, same moustache, same little beady eyes, like 2 pistols and stuff. French girl she was, hair all the way to the back of her legs, nothing on her head. Just really creepy. Now, this building was called the White Lion in honour of a man called Richard Lion.
Yeah.
Came to Canterbury in 1199, and his carvers, well, one of the carvers that produced things like this, so it's of that ilk. Gender archaeologists confirmed it was carved around 1190, so it's around the sort of same period Lionheart would have come here. So it's a really old bit of wood. It's nice to see it still sticking out there. The frontage is Georgian, of course, changed the old medieval shape as the curved wall came round here. We know from history that it was still trading as a pub called the White Lion as late as 1973. And in the 1900s, the husband and wife that lived around the pub used to live in the back section up here. The front bit was accommodation. And we know from the history books the husband treated his wife with the rule of thumb. Have you heard the rule of thumb?
Yeah.
So what's the rule of thumb?
It's like the rule. It's like the going thing, right? It's
a marriage act enacted in 1430 that said if you're beating your wife, you're best to use a stick that's not wider nor broader than your thumb.
Right.
That's the rule.
Watch out, everyone.
Yeah. That's right. So that's the rule of thumb. So nice thin thumb you've got, but there is fat lasting from a big fat thumb.
How big's your thumb, Matt?
Cudgel. There you go.
I reckon I can do some damage.
Yeah, ladies. Get your thumb out. Now, some women like a good beating, some don't, but most of them don't. They're supposed to say thank you when you've beaten them. That's the rule of thumb. If they don't say thank
Hell
you,
yeah.
go for it, ladies. Yeah. Now this woman was unhappy about being beaten. She was the exception to the rule, and she went to the Crown Court to petition for divorce. She couldn't get a divorce because canon law trumped Crown law, and the rule of thumb was in existence until 1991.
Yes, R&R, RVR.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was the same year that we abolished rape within marriage.
That's RVR, R&R. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were a modern country. Anyway, these things will come back eventually. Yeah, we will not to. Now, I'll make you proud. Now, when this woman came back from the butcher shops in Butchery Lane, she borrowed a butcher's hook, S-shaped hook. She went to the attic room up here, so the length of rope from the cellars, tied one end to the banister post to take her own life. Now, did we discuss suicide?
It's illegal. It was illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Yes.
Now, in her case, she didn't achieve suicide because she hadn't done a structural survey. There's no point carrying a basic structural survey. The top beam had dry rot in it. When she jumped down the stairs, she pulled the roof on top of it. Could have killed her. Luckily, the husband came up and beat her up, saved her life. See? Rule of thumb action. Saving lives. Rule of thumb. Saving lives. Now, she was arrested and taken to the gallows to be hung. But there were people there called liberals. Have you heard of liberals?
Scum.
Oh, no, they used to exist. And,
I don't believe in them.
We've killed most of them and sent them to Mogadishu and safe place like that. And I think Rwanda's the next place. It's already, have you booked your holiday to Rwanda? It must be a safe place. You wouldn't want to send people there otherwise it's a safe country. It's a perfect place. I mean, what a great place. Have you not been to Kigali? What a great place, a great restaurant. But in this case, rather cynically, he basically they commuted a sentence to 5 years hard labour at Chatham Dockyards. Chatham Dockyards, you know where Chatham is, where they call the midwife.
Yeah.
And her job was to break rocks like these rocks here, these gobstones, into ballast stone for merchant shipping. And after 5 years, she had massive upper body strength, and she wasn't taking any. When her husband tried to beat her the first night she returned, she grabbed his stick with her left hand and snapped it in two like a match wood, and put the sharp breaking bits of stick up his bottom with such incredible force. Ripped his kidney, his spleen, gave the very first skin of kebab. Her name wasn't Donna, it'd be more simple. But no, it's
Somehow I feel like he didn't complain.
yeah, that's right, got what he was coming to him. In his case, he screamed he was being assaulted by his wife, which was illegal until 1998. If your wife beats you, that was under English law against her. She would be done for assault. Good old English laws. And she was taken and bound over for 7 days in a local prison, which is the Westgate Jail. So really not a nice place to be held. The Westgate? The old medieval gate. But when she returned, she was contrite and she had a friendly relationship. But in December that same year, she attempted suicide a final time on the staircase, this time a bit more successfully. Husband was working down here, locking up, and he heard the sound of her body hit the stairs, assumed she'd fallen over drunk, and when he bent down to give her a kiss on the staircase, it was a nice romantic thing, but he recoiled almost immediately as he kissed the stump of her neck. She had put her husband's razor across her throat as she had thrown herself down the stairs, this time filling her apron with rocks and stones, and the downfalls ripped the head from the shoulder. So he kissed the stump of her neck in the darkness and wiped his mouth clean of her blood on a new vest he got from Marks & Spencer, a white cleaner, still very popular in Essex. And fled down the street screaming, "God help me, my wife is dead." Now the police were following their due diligence. They used to have legs in England, and they did something called a patrol, and the police ran and arrested him for murdering his wife. He was caught red-handed with blood on his face and hands. No question of innocence, no reason for trial. He was taken to the gallows at Wincheap, which is the local parish gallows, and they were hung by the neck until he was dead. They were using a new method of execution called the long drop, where they put a knot under the chin, so when the gallows snapped open, the trapdoor, the neck jumped up and snapped the neck. It was a humane execution. Unfortunately, in his case, the knot has slipped slightly to one side, snapped his windpipe, but didn't break his neck. He survived for 13 minutes, writhing in agony, doing what's called the Irish jig. He's had a rig down. It's payback for what the English did to the Irish. Now, in December last year, some students from Christchurch were staying up here, and in this section in the corner here, they were removing posters from their wall, and a chunk of plasterwork fell away, revealing a void in this section up here. And within the void, they found a sack, a burlap sack, containing a Ouija board from 1901, a year after the death here. Now, they should really have left it where it was. But, you know, when you find a gift like that, it's a gift that keeps on giving. So they set the board up, pretty on the anniversary of a suicide, because she was in December, and they asked that question, is there anybody there? Now, you've probably used a Ouija board, have you?
In one of the episodes, in
Yeah.
one of the episodes of this series, I will be attempting to do it. So yeah.
Can I come?
Just remember, when you use a Ouija board, follow the rules. The rules of the original game, created in 1880 by the French and the German governments, because it was used actually as a technical influence to access the powers of Charlemagne and Frederick the Great. They were trying to contact their military leaders, working out about military tactics and how to fight the Germans or the French.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So when they asked the question, is there anybody there, the spirit came back and answered in German or French, oui or ja, hence Ouija. But when MB Games took on the franchise in America, it became a registered name by MB Games. It's like called Ouija, a bit like Jumanji.
Yeah.
Became much more of a game at that point.
Yeah, but well, where's the game? It makes sense. If you're dyslexic
It was
like
meant
me,
to be a family game, wasn't it, or something stupid?
weird. But in America, of course, it'd be fine because nothing's happened in America. We've got no history. But in England, it's really dangerous because so much brutality has happened and we don't know about it. In America, there's a website called whowasshotintmyhouse.com, which gives you a list of who was shot in your house. Certainly Chicago.
I mean, I live in a new build, so I should be okay. Hopefully.
Built on old body.
So I live in a new build, so it's.
Well, there might have been
What
a
was
sign.
well, exactly.
Could have been a prison. Could have been a prison.
Yeah.
It was suicide headquarters. The girl that actually slept in the same room up here woke in the morning to see her own face staring back at her, which is weird because she didn't have
Reflection.
Well, it was a reflection. Turns out it was the full-length dress mirror by her bed had fallen perpendicular over the bed, and so she woke in the morning from this light illuminating her face. You can see her face quite clearly, but nothing below the neck. Ha! She screamed. No warning. I know no warning. Won't be no fun, will it? Come on, let's move on from here. And from the top, you throw the women off using the bell loops up here. So here, the whole of the bell towers here, they hoisted them up using the bell tower loop here. So basically the rope came through there, and they hoisted them up by their arms to the top. So they wouldn't get all the way to the top. Then they cut the rope and let them fly down here. This is where they landed. They landed on this plinth here, and were dragged into the pit here, where in 1990 we found all the corpses. So it's a perfect location, really.
How you feeling, Matt? How you feeling, Matt, knowing that?
A lot.
Funny, when I first started this tour, we used to do something called cold spotting, which is something that works in the summertime, not so much the winter. But if you're here in the summertime, when it's about sort of 14 degrees, you can actually reach out and feel the columns of cold air as they come through the corpses below you. So there's around 400 corpses in this area alone.
Wow. In this,
Yeah,
this little...
Just in this little splot here.
wow.
It's a deep pit,
God.
and most of them are what are called post holes. The theory was in the 1600s, if you buried a witch, a suicide, or a murderer, you'd bury them head first. The theory was if they woke up after death, they dug themselves close to hell, and that's why they were buried head first. So if you're digging in the garden, you just find a pair of feet. Keep digging until you find the head. If you're in a graveyard and you find a gravestone with the feet pointing towards the church, it means it's a cleric. It's somebody who served the church.
Yeah.
All the other ones are made randomly in any direction. So
Right.
if they're pointing feet towards the church, they were serving the church even at the end.
Crazy.
So headstone, footstone. Now, the reason it's locked up the churchyard is to stop the Conservatives breaking in and getting a new version. But the churchyard was deconsecrated in the 1950s, and when it was deconsecrated, the church records were released, to the public, or at least to the archive. And I found records going back to 1300 of this church. Although it's built in 876, it was the records really started being written down in the 1300s. And the records show that the sexton, whose job it was to dig the graves and to sleep in something called the charnel house, on something called the graveyard shift. You went for the graveyard shift, so you sleep in the graveyard to stop grave robbery mainly, but also to protect the graves. And the gates were closed and locked every night, and they were opened by the sexton the next morning. But every 6 years, the ossuaries were opened up and the bones were taken and burned. Something called a bone fire. The word bone fire became the word bonfire. Because kids
Right.
have heard about it. Bone fire and bonfire are the same thing. But in the Victorian period, they cut the E off it and made it bonfire.
Alright, so we've just done the tour. Absolutely amazing. If you ever come down to Canterbury, make sure you check this guy out. Every single link will be down in the description if you want to join it, because honestly, it's absolutely amazing. Everything you've seen, it doesn't even touch the stuff and the knowledge that we've learned, so just make sure that you do definitely learn it. And it's well worth it, and thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you whenever you come down. God
So,
bless you.
yeah, so I've got one more question.
Okay.
The series is called Is Magic Real? Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm asking everybody. It's a yes or no answer. Don't need to go into too much detail. It's everyone will ask it. The question is magic real? Yes or no?
For me, yes.
Yes, perfect. That's all we need to know. Thank you so much.
No explanation, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Because magic is actually in the eye of the beholder, isn't it, when you think about it?
Well, exactly. That's all right, too.
And in the same way that beauty and love are in the eye of the beholder, but you can't say what is love or what is beauty, because everybody's different.
Yeah. All right, so we've just had a really long way of getting back, and sort of the trains were messed up, right? We've been to, where did we go? Dover. Never been to Dover before. But we've got one more question. Go for you first. Is magic real, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no? Yes. Yes or no? That's not an answer, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.